All right, let's get to it. Joe, new regime, Kalen DeBoer takes over. Now it's 2-0 at Alabama, and last Saturday, the Alabama Crimson Tide named their field, Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It was a really nice thing that they did for arguably the best college football coach of all time, Nick Saban. But what's ironic in this is that they played South Florida, who everybody knows last season, Alabama and South Florida got into it, and they were in a big battle last season. Now, Jalen Milroe didn't play last year. He was back. He played in this game. But, Joe, for 3.5 quarters, 3 quarters, really, this game was a lot of people were keeping their eyes on because this game got relatively close. Here's what I'll say to start with this Bama-South Florida game last week and going into this game versus Wisconsin. Joe, if you watch the last 20 minutes of that football game, they look like one of the best teams in the country. And I think that that's getting missed in a lot of this because for 3 hours, everybody saw, Alabama's in a dogfight. And then all of a sudden, here comes Ryan Williams, Jalen Milroe, Jam Miller, and they absolutely erupted. I don't know yet what to make of this Bama team. I think that this Wisconsin matchup might be a good test for them, but they go to a very hostile environment in Cam Randall with the first-time head coach Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. So, and obviously DeBoer's been through it a lot, but it's on the road, new things going on here. What do you think is going to transpire here, Wisconsin versus Alabama?
So first of all, I'm not worried about what happened against South Florida. I know it was really dicey for those 3 quarters. And then, as you mentioned, they separated as quickly as they could and started to see some young players shine when they were given the opportunities. I'm not worried, one, because they're working through some offensive line issues. As we're taping this on Monday, that situation could completely change. They could get a little bit more healthy. I don't know what the deal is with Pritchard and Proctor. Hopefully they at least have one of them. Because
DeBoer said that Proctor, he would damn near bet that he was going to play in his coach's show this week.
That's good to know because their offensive line really, really struggled, especially at right tackle. They had some serious issues with the amount of pressures that Milroe faced. But I'm also not worried because Byram Brown is one of the best G5 quarterbacks, and I'm willing to bet that once the portal opens, he is going to end up at a bigger program. The way that he played against Alabama is just the beginning. I think this game's going to play out exactly the same way that Tennessee versus NC State did. I think that there's a lot of comparisons that could be made between those two teams. Transfer quarterback coming in that's much older, that's experienced, that can make some plays, but kind of is over the hump, but hasn't really separated and taken that next step just yet. Quality defensive players. I think this will be close for the first quarter, and then I think Alabama's going to start layering it on, and they're going to want to win with some serious gusto and some serious big points and maybe potentially try to blow them out just like Tennessee did against NC State. I don't think they're going to take the foot off the pedal at all in this game.
I do think, though, that Wisconsin has a better overall coaching staff than what we saw at NC State. So I don't think it's going to be an outright blowout. I think Fickle can get some things moving defensively. But, Joe, here's one thing that I'm a little bit concerned. Like, if I'm an Alabama fan, I want to talk about Bama first here. If I'm Alabama, there's one thing that concerns me. 13 penalties, 120 yards. And when you start doing that in crucial moments and crucial times, that's how teams like South Florida stay around, right? That's how – I mean, I'm going to call it what it is. It's why Notre Dame lost to some extent. They had crucial penalties. I know, I'm sorry. But they had crucial penalties at crucial moments, right? Crucial mistakes at crucial moments. Now, they're able to overcome a South Florida team, and I get that. And I think that Wisconsin can stay around. There's in no world where I'm going to put trust in at this current moment in Tyler Van Dyke. And I think that Bama showed that when adversity struck under Kalen DeBoer, that they can overcome it. Dude, I will remain with this. Again, if you go watch that last 20 minutes of that game, they look like one of the better teams in the country right now. It's what I don't want to say great teams do, but it's what really, really good teams do. Look, you're close. You're in a little bit of a dogfight with a team that has not the talent as you, and then all of a sudden you explode in the fourth quarter because you got to be serious and you got to get things moving. Joe, I'm very surprised to some extent, even though they've had some of these offensive line woes, that they've been able to run the football as effectively as they have. I look at Jam Miller last week, 15 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown. I know that Jalen Milroe didn't get the run yards that he wanted. He still had 2 rushing touchdowns, was throwing the ball somewhat effectively. I think he's still got to get better there, Joe. But I just think that I can't so today when I was breaking down and writing down all my notes for final notes going into tonight's show, I don't know anywhere where Wisconsin is better than Bama. I don't think they have a better overall coaching staff. I don't think that they have a better all quarterback, running back, O-line, D-line, linebackers. But that means nothing in the game going in Camp Randall. And I think what's interesting to me in this is that is a hostile environment. And the reason I won't compare it to Tennessee and NC State, Tennessee fans packed that place out. Like that was pretty much a neutral site home game. Right?
Well, it was pointed out to us that it was closer for Tennessee than it was for NC State.
Right.
So they had that advantage.
No doubt. Brother, Cam Randall is a madhouse.
Yeah.
Still don't think I don't think that they have enough firepower in year 2 under Fickle to beat them. However, I want to let this be well known. So we thought, Joe, the last couple of years that it was the Saban issue at times where players were having all these penalties. And I know that the Justin Jefferson hit where the targeting or alleged targeting. I mean, Joe, what is he supposed to do there? I have no real clue. He's trying to make a play on a ball carrier in a crucial part of a game. But again, when you start giving teams more chances, like I look at South Florida from this past weekend. Joe, they were in a dogfight with them. They went 2 of 18 on 3rd down. But why did they stay in the game as long as they did? Because they continue to allow them to stay on the field when it comes to dumb penalties. And that's what I think the only thing that I would be concerned about. Can you go up there and play clean, disciplined football against a team? Joe, I'm going to be real with you. That's going to play clean and disciplined football.
Yeah. They can't allow the mistakes that they had against South Florida to show up. Just an overall lack of execution outside of the penalties that happened in those first 3 quarters. But the biggest reason why I don't think this game is going to be very close after the first half, let's say, if it is within a score, Wisconsin just is not built to go shot for shot with a team like this. They're just not. Their defense is strong. They've got a really good defensive line, but they're not like a Michigan level defense that could have maybe last weekend against Texas, like really locked down that Texas offense. And we saw how quickly Texas was able to separate and how unable Michigan was able to pick up chunk plays to get themselves back within a striking distance. When you're built like this to just run the ball and be physical up front, and your quarterback doesn't take chances downfield, he will occasionally, Tyler Van Dyke might sometimes. This has always been my biggest qualm with him is I feel like he overprocesses, he holds onto the ball too long, and now we're starting to see at Wisconsin, he's just taking these short little gains, and his yards per attempt has been pretty mediocre in the first 2 games for Wisconsin. So I have no fear that Wisconsin is going to be able to generate enough quick yardage to keep themselves close with Alabama, which the inverse, we saw Alabama struggling, and then in the fourth quarter say, all right, let's lock the F in. We're going to put points on the board. We're going to embarrass this team and win by a ton of points in the fourth quarter. There's only so many teams in the country that can do that. And then the last thought with that, Blake, I went back and watched the Western Michigan game live, and then I went back and watched in preparation for this pieces of the South Dakota game. South Dakota is a quality FCS opponent, but they gave up a lot of splash rushing plays, big chunk rushing plays to South Dakota. I think that's going to show up in the run game. I think that Jam Miller and Jalen Milroe are going to produce big rushes that are just going to continue to sway the momentum in Alabama's favor. Here's an even better example of comparing this to. This is going to be just like what happened with Texas and Michigan, but maybe even bigger separation. They went to Michigan, and it felt like the air was taken out of the stadium pretty quickly. I don't think that this game is very much reasoning to believe it's going to be a close, hard-fought battle.
Ryan Williams, the young man who reclassified and now is at Alabama, Joe, I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he's going to be a really good player. I mean, he had a really good game, had a really good play in the fourth quarter that everybody was talking about. Let me ask you this question before we move to Wisconsin a little bit more. Mm-hmm. is there any worry for you that Bama gave up 206 rushing yards? Now, I know what you're going to say. You had a quarterback that can run. He could get outside the tackles and make some things happen. But I also look at USF and their running back, right, who had 11 carries and 50 or 64 yards. It's not as if that USF couldn't line up and run it at him either. So does that worry you at all, any?
No,
not
because
necessarily for this game. Oh, sorry. Not necessarily for this game, but does it worry you that they gave up that many yards rushing?
Well, that's why I open with that. It's an early game in the season with a new head coach going up against a quarterback that is extremely talented. For the non-ball knowers out there, get to know Byron Brown. He is going to be a very highly sought after kid by teams trying to get him to go in the portal. And if he sticks around, total props to him. His ability to impact the game as a rusher is why they gave up so many rushing yards. And it stresses the defense when you're so worried about a quarterback who's having success scrambling and quarterback design runs. It's going to allow for your running back to open things up. That is 1,000% not Wisconsin. And sure, there will be opportunities, though, I think later on in the schedule for Alabama, where we're going to have to be paying attention to that, and they might get stressed again by a mobile quarterback.
That Tennessee game gets really interesting.
That's the great example.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to say. I am not hitting any type of panic button, remotely close to hitting the panic button, but it's just of note. Okay? Like I'm taking a mental note of it that it happened, and let's see what happens moving forward. Looking at Wisconsin, Joe, I don't think that there's any defeat in being beat by Bama, right? Like, not for them. But, man, you got to come out guns blazing, throwing everything you got at them. Like
that's just not Luke Fickell or Tyler Van Dyke, though.
Well,
they don't have that gear.
Here's what I'm going to say. The last time that Luke Fickell went up against Bama, they struggled offensively. Now, I understand that he was at Cincinnati. He had some different players. You know, Sauce Gardner was on that team. Mike Denbrock was the offensive coordinator. But I remind people, Joe, that was a dogfight through 3.5. A dogfight because Alabama's got to score late. Bryce Young can't get things moving, okay? They score late. I think Fickell has done things in the past against big opponents that people are like, you know what, man, they lost, but they didn't look bad in doing it. Can Wisconsin do that here?
I don't know, man. I know that game was. I don't want to like
Desmond Ridder was lighting the world on fire.
Yeah, I mean that's a very. I mean he played a very, very mediocre game. I just like I don't want to jump all the way down to saying that this Wisconsin team's not as good as that Cincinnati team because it was a G5 team, but that Cincinnati team was very, very good. I don't know if they have
Notre Dame. Did they not?
I mean that's not important to what we're talking about here. They had a number of
how many G5 teams?
Stop it. Not important. They had a number of highly coveted NFL draft prospects that year. They were a very well coached and developed team. I don't know if Wisconsin is really there just yet. And then we also have to acknowledge here, like the stage that was on was a lot different. It was the college football playoff stage that they were playing on, which is we've got nothing to lose. We're just going to put everything out on the table.
That's exactly what I'm throwing at. I'm saying
I'd rather have Desmond
my
Ridder.
Point.
I'd rather have Desmond Ridder than Tyler Van Dyke, though. Ridder was good enough to get drafted. Tyler Van Dyke is not.
Here's the point I'll make: Bryce Young's not Jalen Milroe's not Bryce Young either. So there comes a point where
he's a better athlete though. This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/trainingcamp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training's expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.